Hello, Sugarless Amazons around the globe. Greek Goes Keto new series of videos by the ladies, for the ladies. Well, our first show is not going to be only by the ladies. We're going to invite an interesting man, somebody I really love following on Twitter and other social media. I'm talking about Dr. Jay Wrigley, who I spoke to and loved the conversation, loved the whole energy, and really you will get inspired and love everything he had to say. In case you would like to get in touch with him, Dr. Jay Wrigley, originally from North Carolina, but now somewhere in the Caribbean, works with women online. You can contact him, you can get in touch, you can work with him. The same like many women are contacting my husband, who's a nutritional therapist. But this time you're talking about functional medicine doctor who will definitely help you get in better shape, health, and wellness. So let's quickly see what I spoke to Dr. Jay Wrigley.
I'm ready to go.
So great to meet you. It's like it's been years that we've been chatting occasionally and following each other on Twitter and agreeing on mostly everything, like almost everything. But who am I to say anything compared to your knowledge and your degree? I'm just a food blogger. But my husband is a nutritional therapist, and in so many things he agrees with you. One of the biggest things that Greek Goes Keto, Keto Mediterranean diet has in common with your diet, dietary guidelines is high protein, of course, low carb or almost no carb if possible, and moderate fat. So I really would like to go a little bit deeper what it means moderate fat and why protein, because we know Greek, so in Greek protein it means protos, the first nutrient. This is how it got its name. But what it means from a point of view of a woman of a certain age. I will not put anybody in any particular, because I'm talking to that age is just a number. So any woman, why protein is crucial?
Well, so here's how this works. Let's first look at, because of what my specialty is in, and it's usually in women who are making the transition either into perimenopause, they're in their early to mid 40s, or they're in their late 40s, early 50s, and making that transition into full menopause. What happens here is that the three primary hormones within both men and women, but certainly in women, of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, are declining very quickly throughout the 40s and into the 50s. Each one of these hormones has a metabolic effect that helps the body stay in kind of homeostasis, balance, or whatnot. But because they have a metabolic effect, as they begin to decline, a woman is more designed and set up to be it's easier for her to store energy and store fat than it is to release fat at that time in her life. So when we look at like the typical ketogenic diet that a lot of us started, down this journey with, and can work remarkably well, especially for males and especially for younger or middle-aged males, it doesn't hold to be true a lot for women in their late 40s and early 50s, because again, if you don't want to be taking in excess energy, and the highest energy source that we're going to know of in our diet is really going to be pure fat. So what we have to do is we have to look at how to modify this for a woman to give her the advantage that she wants to actually get lean. So we need to move away a little bit from this idea of eating a low carb but extra fat in the diet to try to drive ketosis, or whatever the reasoning was at that time. You're just adding a bunch of fat to a diet that already is a little bit handicapped in its ability to release fat. So if you modify that by using protein as your leverage, and increase the amount of protein that you would typically eat on a low carb ketogenic diet, and you bring the fat content down, you've got a really nice scenario there where you find this metabolic health that allows a woman to get leaner. So we move it in that direction for higher protein, lower fat, keeping the carbs low. And that works really, really well when you've got hormonal changes going on.
Tweet of yours, because you tweeted this several times, is the fact that you don't need excess fat to enter ketosis. Not that you need ketosis all the time. You also tweeted a couple of times that it's quite okay to just step out of ketosis and easily go back in. You can work with it. But what's extremely interesting, we all like to call it keto, but it doesn't have to be keto for life. It just has to be some type of low carb. But protein always has to be like the main source of your nutrients, let's say. But another thing which totally attracted me to your tweets, it's like I'm like the biggest fan. I keep on and just liking everything you tweet. You keep pointing out that it's extremely important. It doesn't matter what type of protein you choose, the omega profile is important. If you are basing your protein intake from chicken and pork, there's a problem there, right? Could you give a little bit more info why there's a protein, why there's a problem if that?
Yeah, absolutely. But I'll touch on a little bit about what you said as I move into that earlier, Roberta, and that is this idea about ketosis. I do not see this as a big driver of why it is that anybody would want to spend all of their time in ketosis. We're trying to figure out, all of us physicians and all of us healthcare providers are, what is the true metabolic healthy diet? Mm-hmm. And a lot of our pattern for what we're going to decide that to be is going to be looking at our ancestral evolutionary diet. These people would have spent, before agriculture revolution or whatnot, they would have spent large amounts of time in ketosis, not because they preferred to. It would be obligatory, right? Because the hunt is not always going to be successful. There were going to be times during the year, especially in the late spring or whatnot, where there's a lot more of fruits and nuts and seeds and berries. Well, yeah, maybe more in the fall for those, but there's going to be times where you're eating seasonally and what's available to successfully hunting, that you would have been in and out of ketosis, a good bit. Mm-hmm. So we want to mimic that a little bit, and we need to, I like to teach people that it's not of really any huge benefit to always be in ketosis. As a matter of fact, we don't know exactly what's going to come down at the end of the research of being in ketosis for 10 years at a time. Mm-hmm. But the main thing is that we know that it's not absolutely necessary. That if we walk a fine line where you want to be dipping in and out of ketosis, that's going to be your best bet, because you're going to get fat adapted, which is going to allow you to better those periods of time when you're not in ketosis. You're going to be able to utilize glucose. You're going to be able, but then you're going to also be able to shift right back into a fat burner as soon as you go lower carb. So I think, this modification and almost occasionally purposely cycling in and out of ketosis seems to work better for a lot of reasons, and we can talk about that later. Now, you just mentioned the idea about we were going to talk about omega fatty acids, and so here, as we know, two things. One is our ancestral diet, again, was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1-to-1 omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids, up to 1 to 9 or 10 omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids. The typical American diet today is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 ratio of 1 omega-3 to 50 to 70 times the amount of omega-6 fatty acids, which are pro-inflammatory, disturbing the gut microbiota. They have all kinds of negative hormonal balances that lead to, again, inflammation, which leads to cardiovascular events and stuff like that. So we I definitely spend a good amount of time teaching people that we want a ratio that's far better in that. And to come back to your point, we know that from a Mediterranean diet standpoint, including more things like lamb and fish in the diet, which would be higher in omega-3s than omega-6s, you're setting yourself up for a real for real win metabolically, so to speak. So, and as you said, it's not that people should never eat something like pork or chicken. They can be fine. They need to be sourced a little bit better, because if you're just getting factory manufactured poultry or something like that, that's where the omega-6 are so high that you're getting so much of these inflammatory products as opposed to the benefits of the omega-3s, that the people that are trying to do low carbohydrate diets and are focusing primarily on just pork, and even more importantly, just chicken as their go-to source of protein, might a lot of times find that they're not getting the results that they thought that they should have, and their health is not improving the way that it should. And a lot of that has to do with the higher levels of omega-6.
Interesting how you called it standard American diet. Well, I would say standard Western European diet also. Sure. It's interesting how this diet became a trend all around the globe. I would say everybody during the 80s, especially, the fast food chains became extremely popular. And if your country had, half of the countries in Europe were in the Eastern Bloc. I lived in a country which is both. It was one of the only countries which had both American influence and Soviet influence. But we'll not talk about politics now. We'll talk about It's important in relation to how the standard American diet became standard world diet, Western world diet. But there's something about tradition. For example, you are located now in a small country, a beautiful coastal country, which has a lot of tradition. Do you see any improvements from standard American diet, or is the standard diet of people there also very unhealthy?
Well, what's interesting is about where I am now in the Caribbean, at least for the next little bit of time, is I find that the people here, it's odd. I would not consider their diet to be something that I would normally teach people, because it seems to be fairly high in carbohydrate, a lot of rice, beans, things like this. A lot of more poultry, like we just talked about, and certainly a lot of pork. However, what I find is that because of the fact that these people, they don't have any way of processing or manipulating anything at this point. So if you eat chicken down here, every bit of it is free range chicken that fed off of bugs and insects and all the things you would want in chicken. Right. And the eggs have these amazing, like orange fluorescent yolks, like they're supposed to.
I saw a couple of your photos. You've been taking photos of your meals, and I said, wow, these are some good eggs.
Yeah, so they have the benefit that everything that they eat, even though sometimes I think they should dial it back in some of the higher carbohydrate stuff, they tend to, you don't see a lot of obesity here. You see people living into old age and healthy and happy or whatnot, more so than you would in America, for sure. And going back to your point, the problem in America was when we manipulated the food supply to combine refined sugar and oil into the diet. Now, we talk a lot about seed oils, these are highly inflammatory omega-6, but it can even be any fat. Like McDonald's, the problem is there's a lot of omega-6 in there, but there's also just a lot of fat in general. But when you combine that with that, there's sugar in all of the bun, the ketchup, probably even the meat itself. And when you combine sugar and fat together, you have got, it's disaster. And it's disaster because of the fact that the body has a pyramid or a hierarchy of how it has to burn energy, and it's got to burn carbohydrate first. So if you eat fat and sugar together, your body has to burn that sugar fat first, and then more than likely by the time that it's burnt the sugar and it could start working on all that fat that you ate in that meal. You've come to your next meal and you've eaten again. And so you never get ahead of this curve. You're always burning carbohydrates. So all the fat that came with the carbohydrates just being stored away in your fat cells, big problem. And, you know, we see now type 2 diabetes going crazy and obesity and all this kind of stuff in the Western world. And a lot of it is just that combination of sugar and fat together in the same meal. And it just doesn't work out very well at all.
We have to be a little bit louder about this. We have to talk more often. And I'm really grateful that you're sharing like pearls. And I will not say throwing the pearls. You know the rest of the saying. I will just say throwing the pearls to the people. People will get at least a pearl, a single pearl, and they're going to change. Sure. I've talked to many women and I met many women who worked with you and they're amazed. What I like about you is you still have this dose of human touch. You have a sense of humor. You have a great approach, even in replying to people on Twitter or other social media. So how is it to work with you? How women can contact you? And another question, can you also help to younger women? For example, we are facing problems with fertility. Many young women are struggling with hormonal imbalances and other problems which are leading to them being infertile. So can they also help you?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, that primarily for 25 years, my specialty has been in female hormonal health care. And that certainly there's a lot of younger women that I see because of that are dealing with things like PCOS or infertility, and issues around thyroid problems or ovarian problems or having problems ovulating and things like that. What's interesting about it is it's all very similar. It's usually where these problems start is in a dysfunctional relationship of how your body metabolically handles your fuel sources, of what it's going to burn for fuel and what it's going to do with the extra fuel that you're taking in. A lot of times, Roberta, you'll see me put out something on social media about that. The big problem is what we call energy toxicity. And what that means is, to clarify for people so that they're not thinking of toxic like that we're talking about fertilizers or pesticides. We're talking about that you have a threshold of energy that you can take into the body before energy becomes toxic. And if you take in a toxic amount of energy, you throw off everything about your gut, your hormones, the way your endocrine system works, and these are your thyroid and your adrenals and your ovaries and things like this. And so I find a common denominator amongst most women, whether they're 22 or whether they're 52, that the majority of this problem is a metabolical problem. And so if you're looking to increase fertility, you have to do the same things to make sure that your body is handling energy well, so that you're not putting a stress on something like your ovarian function and producing too much cortisol, this stress hormone, which is going to blunt another hormone called progesterone. And progesterone is the only thing that's going to ever really make sure a woman can get pregnant and is going to sustain her pregnancy is her level of progesterone. So if you're producing too much cortisol, your stress hormone, which is going to block your ability to utilize progesterone in favor of cortisol, you're going to have problems with getting pregnant, staying pregnant. These are the women who have miscarriages and stuff like that. And it's the same mechanism really that leads a lot of times to the polycystic ovarian syndromes. A lot of these young teenage women are having problems with being obese already, is really the same mechanism that we're talking about here, about how all these hormones work together. And like, I'll walk you through a little common one right now. I will see 3-5 people every single day that fit this scenario. They've got increased stress in their life and they're eating a carbohydrate rich diet. So this will eat up progesterone in favor to make cortisol. That elevation in cortisol will, with the combination of now you don't have the progesterone to antagonize the estrogen in the female body, and that needs to happen. So if you've got estrogen that's not being antagonized by progesterone, and you've got cortisol being elevated, you're going to suppress your thyroid function, this gland that sits in the base of your throat that runs your metabolic machinery through oxygenation. Now, this won't come back on a blood test a lot, because the problem is the thyroid hormone. The thyroid's making enough hormone. The hormone can't get into the cells of your body because estrogen is blocking it. So you get this cascade of elevation of cortisol, which is going to make you retain belly fat. Then you get the slowing of the thyroid function, but it's not picked up on a blood test. You got the diminished progesterone that's leading to this estrogen dominance, and it's a perfect storm. The good news is you're not broken, and this can easily be shifted back into place. But most women would never be what woman is supposed to be able to know how to do this on her own, right?
Website. So how does it work? Does it work something like this? You talk to your patients online because you are not located, you don't have a clinic, you just work like a freelancer, let's say, just like me, just like Apollina's. So how does it work? Do you see real results? Do these women, do you cooperate with their physicians or something like that? How does it work?
Yeah, I do all of that. I mean, as a physician myself, it's, I provide people, the way medicine is moving today, and I have a unique advantage, I guess, in the fact that I do a type of healthcare with mainly women, but a lot of men recently who want to deal with their own hormonal stuff. But I do something that doesn't really require me sitting down because these things don't require a physical examination. And so I have the ability now to consult with women all over the world via, this type of format through Zoom and other, video models where I can still take their case. If there is testing that needs to be done, we can work that out. Or a lot of them already have had testing from another doctor. They can shoot that to me and I can go through all of that and then build them out a roadmap based on what their goals are. If they want to get leaner, they want more energy. A lot of them need to sleep better. They have too much stress in their lives. Hot flashes, night sweats, some of the menopausal stuff. We're able to do all of that without doing that in-house. And so that's the reason that I kind of left clinical practice, was to be able to work with many more people. I enjoy this right here, to be able to talk to you in Croatia. Yesterday, to be able to have a patient in South Africa, that's very rewarding to me. So I enjoy doing the online consultations, and it works out perfectly well. We can get it all done. And if I need to consult with one of their physicians about something and they're open-minded to it, then we can certainly set that kind of stuff up.
Some say that the internet is a source of stress, but actually it can be used properly, and then you will have relief of stress by utilizing knowledge that you can find online. I think internet is a great thing. It's all in the perspective.
It can be. It certainly can be.
If you change the perspective and a goal.
Yeah, right.
So I really want this conversation to be relaxed, because I want my viewers to enjoy it with a cup of tea and to get inspired. So this is going to be a series for women. You are the first guest, but who better than you can talk about women and their health? You've been working for over 25 years, right, with women. And I really would like to mention your recent tweet where you said that you're taking a holistic approach, like something with this naturopathy. Correct me if I pronounce it wrong. It's a kind of medicine which tries to do things naturally as much as possible, like to the level when nothing else helps, and then you have to reach for the pharmaceutical products, but you try to stay away from them as much as possible. Is this true, or did I get it wrong?
I think that how I would put that is definitely I have roots in what would be called naturopathic medicine. At this point, I would rather, or I would just say it this way. It's, to me, it's really about what we call functional medicine. So functional medicine is the idea that when you're dealing with any individual and what they're dealing with is that you are out to look for what is the root cause of this problem and address that root cause.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do it that way, what normally happens is this is what really leads somebody away from the pharmaceutical approach to healthcare, is that pharmaceuticals are really designed for symptomatic relief of a problem, but it's not something that addresses the root cause of the problem. So we like to, and to put it that way, what I like to do is to look at where is this at its most root cause. Is it metabolic dysfunction because of chronic dietary problem choices? Is there some there could be some hereditary stuff here that's passed down from a mother to a daughter where she has weakened ovarian function and whatnot. But whatever it is, it's so much more rewarding to put together a holistic treatment protocol for someone that's going to include proper diet, physical activity, as much as possible, the most natural medicine that you could use. So a lot of times I will use things like botanical medicines.
Mm-hmm.
I also will use nutritional supplementation, all of those things first before we even think about, let's write you a script for something that was made synthetically in a laboratory somewhere and believe that that's going to be solving your problem.
So
that's
yeah,
how we like it.
you explained it very well, and I was very happy to read that tweet. Here's the thing: this series is going to be called Sugarless Amazon. So Amazon women, they like to fight. So here's a small fight between me and you. You do not support keto sweets. You say that stay away from the sweets, while we have an approach which we call Pneumenia. Pneumenia in ancient Greece was a holiday, the only holiday when they ate sweets. It was once per month,
Mm-hmm.
and it was on the day of a new moon. It was the biggest holiday, so they would have to collect honey, buy expensive ingredients, and then prepare a festive dessert, which often used to be low carb because they would use sesame flour instead of wheat flour, etc. So it would be something really good for them, but only once per month. So would you agree there, or you would say forever stay away from sweets, from the taste of even monk fruit?
Yeah, let me clear up. Let me clear up my perspective on that. It's not about that I believe that that's a loaded gun, Roberta, because my thought about it is this. I first stand by I think that the issue is if you keep letting people drive a pathway that thinks that sweets is some kind of reward for and what they really, really want. I think that whether it's low carb sweets or whatever it is I think that you need to be aware of not driving that trigger for someone who's already set up for sweets was their problem in the first place. So again, I don't have a problem with so much of it. I also believe there's a better way to do this. Now, again, we might just beg to differ on this. My thought about that is I love ice cream. When I'm going to eat ice cream, I'm going to eat real ice cream. I don't want anything to do with keto ice cream flavored with stevia. No, I want milk and fat and sugar together. Now, I don't do this very often, maybe twice a year. So I believe that you'd be better off eating the real deal than having some kind of manipulated something that really has no nutritional value to it whatsoever, but was sweetened with some kind of monk fruit and it's a lot of complication that's leading too many people to believe that I can sit around and eat sweet food all day long and stay low carb. And I don't think that's very smart.
That's a good, well, you have a good point there, but you have to try my keto ice cream.
Oh, I'm not, look, yeah, I do.
I swear to you, many of the keto ice creams taste better than the sugar ones, because monk fruit in particular has this specific aroma very similar to honey, and it has some benefits. Many studies are showing that monk fruit actually is the best sweetener you can use, has been used by monks and people in Asia for thousands of years. So if we just replace sugar, a standard ice cream, which is cream, butter, eggs, and monk fruit, it's still great. But okay, I agree with you on everything. We had to finish with a little bit disagreement, but this is
that's fine.
What gives the spice to this series. And I really would like to thank you. You have been patient with me, and you answered so many questions. I took already too much of your time.
Roberta, it's so good to finally meet you. I can't wait to meet Greek Goes Keto too, and hopefully we will all get together in Greece.
Apollo, you can remember him like the god over here, the Greek god. Anyway, thank you 1 million times.